morning, everyone. My name is Jennifer Johnson, and I'm the Executive Director of Alberta Tomorrow. I don't know what it's like where you are today, but it's really cold here in the foothills of Alberta, adjacent to the beautiful Bow River. As you can tell, I'm cold because my lips aren't working properly, but to tell you a little bit about myself, so I am Executive Director of Alberta Tomorrow, but I'm a former biologist and high school biology teacher. So today what I'm going to do is show you our modeling tool called Alberta Tomorrow. So have you been to all the different ecoregions of Alberta, all the different natural regions? Have you seen what the land was like in the year 1910? Do you know what the land might be like in the year 2050? Probably not. And I'm going to guess that your students also have not visited all the ecoregions of Alberta, nor have they time traveled back to the year 1910 or forward to 2050. But lucky for you, today I'm going to show you that tool that allows you to do just that. We can look at all the different land uses in Alberta. We can see what the land was like before humans really impacted it very much. And we can make predictions about what it might be in the future. We can look at climate change and look at 3 different climate change scenarios and see how our future here in Alberta might change in the next 30 years. And the beauty of all this is you're going to do it from the seat of your pants. So why do we exist? Well, we exist for these people. We exist because there's a whole lot going on in Alberta, and we want to ensure a sustainable future for our youth. With Alberta Tomorrow, we have a mission to deliver a platform that empowers youth to design and sustain a future for our shared ecosystem. We have a vision of an informed society actively fostering sustainable futures. We've been around since 2003. We're a not-for-profit society in Alberta, CRA registered charity, and we have an 11-member board of directors with a diverse set of backgrounds representing education, government, oil and gas, forestry, agriculture, private consultancies, and Indigenous peoples. Alberta Tomorrow is an interactive tool. There's a field trip component to it. We have an area where you can save your water quality field trip data, as well as the computer portion of it. It's curriculum-based, strong ties to the Alberta Program of Studies, and the lesson plans all have the curriculum objectives there. It's knowledge-based. Alberta Tomorrow is nothing made up. It's a simplified version of the LC simulator, which stands for a Landscape Cumulative Effects Simulator. It's a professionally used simulator by oil and gas companies, forestry companies, and the government. It's innovative. No tool, GIS tool, that is as user-friendly as ours exists for free for students. It's bias neutral. We are presenting the facts. We are basically saying this is what's happening in the various industries and this is what's happening to our environmental indicators. We're not pointing fingers. We want people to understand what's going on. And it's web-based and free. The version that I'm going to show you today is actually version 6. We have new animated videos. There's the ability for students to actually change the landscape. It's watershed based, so study areas are watersheds in Alberta. We have a new climate change module, which allows you to look at a mild, medium, or hot climate change scenario. The area to include system observations directly on the satellite imagery. We have split out all the best practices or the beneficial management practices so you can see how one changes the result of your land use plan. And we've added our 360 virtual ecoregion tours of Alberta's natural regions. So this is what we show the world here. We want people to come to Alberta because of its beauty. But the reality is that there's a lot going on our landscape, and not everything has positive effects on our environment. So the reality is we cannot do everything, everywhere, all the time. So in one way, it's deciding how we allocate the pie. But rather in Alberta, it's how do we allocate the province? What do we do in what areas of the province, when, and how often? What do we do, when, and where? Because really we need to think about balancing people, the planet, with profit. We know that our sustainable plans for Alberta's future must balance the natural capital we have, so the water, the carbon, the wildlife, with all of these industries and land uses. In the end, we must balance the ecological, the social, and economic needs of Albertans. So basically, we need a plan. You wouldn't build a house without a plan. You would make decisions. Where's the bedroom going to be? Where's the bathroom? Where's the kitchen? Where's the veranda? Where's the yard? And you would have a blueprint. You also wouldn't do it without a budget. You would have money somehow in mind. So we need to budget within our environmental constraints, which is the land, water, air, biodiversity. Because if we look at what's been happening in the province since the year 1910, this is what's happened to the area of natural landscapes. This is what's happened to water quality. This is what's happened to our energy sector footprint. This is what's happened to the amount of cropland in the province. And this is what's happened to our population. So with all that in mind, let's jump right in and explore Alberta by the seat of our pants. Welcome to Alberta Tomorrow. Today I'm going to show you how the various parts of the simulator work so that you can explore all of Alberta with your students. So the first thing you need to do is you need to create an account, and that can be done fairly easily. Your students need a username and password. Lots of teachers use the Google passwords, so everybody remembers it. But once you are all registered, you just hit Launch Simulator. So first I'll just give you kind of a navigation of where everything is. So on the left-hand side here, all the teacher resources are found. All of these lesson plans are filterable by grade, subject, curriculum tags. So for example, this particular lesson plan here, if we just view the details, it has the videos that your students will be watching and a download to the actual files that your students need. So everything is here under the teacher resources. These top ones are glacier lesson plans, talking about watersheds, climate change, Alberta's glaciers, and then some of these ones further down get into the specific curriculum objectives. For example, Bio 20, Social Studies 9, Grade 4 Social Studies, Grade 7 Science, and so on. So everything is linked to the Alberta Program of Studies and is all available here for you. If we go down to your mission, just really quickly tells your students what it is that they're going to be doing. If you hit on the Explore mode, this is where you can just explore the satellite imagery. I'll just point out up here in the top left corner, you can actually switch between satellite imagery and the actual map. And so this gives you a little bit more of an indication of what the vegetation actually looks like. So you can zoom in. What I usually try and do is have students look at the different evidence that humans have changed the landscape. So the squares and rectangles we can see here from crops. If we go down further south, we can start to see the crop circles from irrigation pivots. We can go into the Rocky Mountains or up into the boreal forest, and we can actually see cut blocks from the forestry industry. So if we go in here just north of the Ghost area, you can see all the cut blocks from forestry. If you go down one, this is where you will find the videos. These videos are also on our YouTube channel, but if you just have a look at them here, they're tutorial videos to help your students navigate through the different aspects of the simulator. And then we've got some general ones on climate change and management practices, ecological goods and services, and then all of these environmental indicators and social economic indicator videos are also part of the lesson plans. You can also access them from within the simulator when you're doing your plans. They range in length from maybe 30 seconds to 5 minutes in length, so they're really quite short. And then also on the satellite imagery, you will see different points of interest. So we have glaciologists talking about how the Athabasca Glacier has changed. We've got fisheries biologists talking about fish kills in central Alberta due to excess nutrients, and some other videos here that you can look at, some significant areas in Alberta like the Athabasca Sand Dunes or Writing on Stone Provincial Park. Those are all found in the videos. If you go down to the virtual tours, this is where you will find the virtual tours of Alberta's ecoregions. I'll come back to those after. All of your scenarios will be saved in the scenarios section, so you can either create new scenarios or you can see ones that you already have. If we go down to the observations, this is where your students can actually input water quality observations, land use observations, and it's geotagged and saved to that exact location on the satellite imagery. When you do that, that means that data is accessible to all students or users across Alberta. When we go down to reports, this is where all the reports that your students have created will be saved, and these can be used for assessment. One down is where you'll find your points count and all the awards that you have got, as well some quests that your students can do. So for example, if we were looking at water quality and fish habitat, if we click on this, there are 4 steps that your students have to take to complete the quest. Once they do that, they will get a whole bunch of points that will be reflected up here. And then finally, if we go down to the very bottom to the leaderboard, you can see the top scores for your school or just globally for all users of Alberta Tomorrow. So that's just kind of a quick summary of where everything is along the left-hand side. So the first thing I will show you is the virtual tours. So the virtual tours are 360 virtual tours. Let's say we want to go to the grasslands and figure out what the grasslands actually look like. So by using sound, 360 photography, your students can experience what it is actually like. I'm going to turn the sound on. It might come through, it might not. But once you are in the tour and you look around, you can zoom in, you can zoom out, and there are different icons to find. So these are did you knows. So here talks about the prickly pear cactus, one of the cactus species here in Alberta. But students have to find things like geography. There are some did you know kind of fun facts talking about the colors of a lot of grassland plants, adaptations, and we can go to landforms and animals. We can look at what causes the badlands. So all these hot spots are available to your students. You can learn about what plants, what animals are in each of the ecoregions, but use it kind of as a scavenger hunt that they have to go through all of the different ecoregions and find the different icons. And once again, there are lesson plans that will lead you through all of this. So that's kind of a sneak peek of the virtual tours. Now, we have a virtual tour for each natural region in Alberta. So there's 6 of them total. You can look at the Canadian Shield, Grasslands, Rocky Mountain region, Aspen Parkland region, the Foothills region, and the Boreal Forest. So your students can get a really immersive experience by just looking at the tours. All right, so let's go and figure out how we can do some time traveling here in the simulator and explore Alberta. In the simulator, students can run 3 different simulations: a historic simulation that takes them back to the year 1910, business as usual simulation, which will project 30 years into the future, and then a land use simulation, which is where they create their own land use plan for the future. So when I click on the historic and hit create, first thing you have to do is choose your study area. So we can look at large drainage areas, or we can look at smaller watersheds. So for today's purposes, I'm just going to look at the Bow watershed. It shows a lot of change over time. It's an interesting area. As well, you will notice that you can actually look at smaller sub-watersheds. However, we won't be doing that today because we want to look at the entire watershed. So you just click next. You're going to name this and say this is the historic Bow. So looking at the Bow watershed. And then we run the scenario. So Alberta Tomorrow is all based on Alberta research, Alberta data. So what we are going to be seeing is what the landscape looked like in the year 1910 and how it changed to the year 2020. Now you will notice on the satellite imagery there's this map overlay, and within this map overlay the different colors represent different landscape types or land uses. So orange is agriculture, which we see none of yet, yellow is grassland, blue is water, light green is wetland area, so that could be forested, it could be swampy areas. The dark green represents forests, purple represents urban areas, cities and towns, and then the gray is industrial. So that's large scale industrial like airports, oil sands, mining, that kind of thing. So that's what the colors on the map are. Now when we look up here, we have a whole set of environmental and social economic indicators that are going to change at the same time. So for example, if I click on natural landscapes, in the year 1910, it was 100%. There's a link to the video here, and I will point out there's also a link to the technical document down here that has all the research and the formulas, the research that went into making those formulas. We are concerned on the environmental side with area of natural landscapes, grizzly habitat, which is the indicator species for the southern half of the province, and caribou for the northern half. Fish habitat, water quality that looks at phosphorus runoff, biotic carbon storage, so how much carbon is stored in the grasses, the trees, and the plants. And then we're also looking at greenhouse gases. As you can see in the year 1910, everything's pretty great. But we hadn't really started doing very much on the landscape yet. It's saying 0 people, but we know that the Indigenous people were here. Calgary was already established. However, those people weren't using the landscape like we do now, so it kind of represents 0 people. GDP, so gross domestic product, that is measured by how many barrels of oil in the hydrocarbon production, how much timber is being cut down for forestry, and how much agricultural production there is. And then we also look at water consumption, so how many swimming pools are being used. So in 1910, not so much for social economic performance, and environmental health is great. When we go down here and press play, we see the landscape begins to change, and then the dials are changing in real time. So students can start to put together why one dial is going down, why one dial is going up, does one dial affect another one, what's changing on the landscape that's going to affect those dials. We can see how the numbers change down here. We can switch between temperature and precipitation maps by going up here if we choose. So lots of different things that can be investigated by looking at the historical scenario. So all we're trying to show is that when we change the landscape, there's an impact on our environmental health and social economic health. If we wanted to, we could go down here and we could create a report that would show that. You can add up to 4 different reports, or sorry, 4 different scenarios on one report. And if you hit share, that report can be emailed, it can be shared on social media with your networks. All right, so we are going to go back to looking at the business as usual scenario. So a business as usual scenario, as I mentioned before, is when I do my business as usual, I go back and I pick my study area. So I'm going to look at the same study area, which is the Calgary Bow Watershed. I'm going to click next, and I am going to call it the BAU for the bow. And click next. Now, in this scenario, we have the option of looking at climate change. We can ignore climate change. We can look at a mild, medium, or hot scenario. So a mild scenario looks at using RCP 2.6, medium is RCP 4.5, and hot is 8.5. And what we can see in the simulator is a shift in the ecoregions as a result of these different scenarios. It's going to default to medium, and I'm just going to leave it at medium. Then I click run the scenario, and this is where we will look at what may happen in the next 30 years. Of course, we don't have a crystal ball. This is a prediction based on what's happened in the past. So when I go and I press play, you can see that once again the dials are moving, and we can start to make predictions as to why those dials are moving. We could go back and we could switch to a different climate change scenario if we wish. But the question really becomes is this the future that we want? Do we want our environmental indicators to continue going down? 99% of the time, students say, no, that's not what they want. So then we go back to the scenarios and we do the last type of scenario, which is called the land use scenario. And this is where students get to create their own plan. They get to really make some decisions based on all the knowledge that they have already gained. So we're going to pick our same watershed again. Just going to switch it to map view. So we're going to look at the Bow Watershed, and I'm going to click next. Now here we have to set goals. So this is my plan for the bow, so my future. Now, each one of these dials has a slider. So we can see where the indicator is right now. We can also set a goal of where we want it to be in the future. So let's just say in the future, I want to increase natural landscapes. I want to try and get some grizzly habitat. And of course, younger students want to get 100% grizzly habitat, but then we talk about what that really means and maybe rewatch the mammal habitat video. I want fish habitat to get better, because if fish are getting better, that means that water quality is probably getting better. I certainly don't want water quality to fall, so I'm going to increase my water quality. Biotic carbon storage, I want that higher so there isn't as much carbon in the atmosphere, and I want to get greenhouse gas emissions down. Now, it's all about balancing what we need from the land in terms of our lives as well as those ecosystem services. So, is it realistic to say that this area is not going to grow? Probably not. So maybe we'll get population to grow a little bit. GDP, I want to go up a little bit. I know that that's going to come from oil and gas production and from timber production and from agriculture production. And I want the amount of water we're using. Once you've set your goals, the next step is to decide how you're going to reach those goals. So in this part of the simulator, we have the ability to change the landscape for the future. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, I wanted natural landscapes to go up. So I'm going to click on grasslands and I'm going to say in the future, I want there to be another 26,000 hectares grassland there, there, and there. Is that going to allow me to reach my goal? Probably not. What if I had some forest back over here? This area used to be forest. I also wanted Calgary's population, or this area's population, to go up. So maybe I want it to grow there and there so it doesn't take up more natural landscapes. So you can see that these are all the changes that I'm making on the map in the next 30 years. And we can see it graphically down here also. Then once I have done that, I click next, and I can either do this now or I can come back to it later, but I can actually set the level of industrial activity. So how much forestry, how much oil and gas production is happening on this landscape. And I can also go down here and I can decide which beneficial management practices I want to use to try and reach my goals. So if I click on here, it will actually describe to me what agriculture fertilizer application practices are. And so this means that farmers are carefully calculating the amount of fertilizer they're putting on so there isn't excess phosphorus running off into our bodies of water. So maybe we'll just leave these for now. We'll come back to them. We'll leave this at a medium climate change scenario, and we'll run our simulation. So we'll be able to see if we can actually reach our goals in the next 30 years or not. Maybe the goals were unrealistic, so we would have to go back and look at those, or maybe we didn't draw enough change to actually reach those goals. So I'm just going to zoom in here so we can see the change actually happening. So here's 2020, and if I press play, you can see the landscape changing where I chose it to change, if it was possible. And we can see what happened to our goals. Now, if we look at these, if the dot is red, I didn't reach my goals. If it's yellow, I got close. And if it's green, I did. So I didn't really do very well here. Maybe this wasn't a realistic goal, so I could go back and I could actually change the goal. But maybe I feel really strongly about keeping that goal. Maybe I need to go back, click the little button, and I need to actually add some more grassland to reach that goal. So then I can run this scenario again and see if I'm able to reach that goal. So it really becomes a practice of going back and forth. It's not a quick process. It's not an easy process to try and reach your goals either. So once we are done with the scenario, we simulate the plan again, and I still am not able to reach my goal. But pop-ups will come up to engage your students into thinking about things that maybe they haven't thought of yet. But if we go back here, okay, I'm still not reaching my natural landscape goal. What if I look at my management practices? So I can change the industrial activity. I can have it go up to 100%. I can have it go down to 0%. But the reality is we have to find that balance between the two. So where do we want that to be? Even if we leave that there, but look at our beneficial management practices. So what if I turn agriculture best management? I don't know if you saw that, but I actually got closer to reaching my water quality goal. Well, I'm not reaching this one down here for water consumption, but what if I turn on management practices for agricultural, water conservation, municipal, energy sector? What if we use more renewable energy? What if we phase out coal electricity? What if we use conservation? I don't know if you can see, but all of these are getting a little bit better. If we use more electrical vehicles, what if we increase urban densification? What if we decrease our industrial footprint? Oh, let's just scroll down. See, we got closer to our goal over there. And what if we use carbon capture and storage? So by turning on those beneficial management practices, we have in fact got closer to reaching a lot of these goals. But that's still not good enough. I would say we either have to go back and draw some more change, or maybe the goals are just not reachable. But your students would have to go back and forth and back and forth. And then once they're done, they can go down here and they can actually create a report. So I'll click on Create Report, and I'm going to find the scenarios that we just did. So I'm going to add this historical one. I'm going to add the business as usual and my plan for the bow for the future and launch the report, and then I can compare them right here. Sometimes it takes a while to actually come up. But these are ways that your students can actually demonstrate their learning. You can use them for assessment tools. And if you save the report down here, then you also have the option to share that report so they can email it directly to you. So that's kind of the whole simulator in a nutshell. Remember, you can compare the 3 different climate change scenarios. You can look at the 360 virtual tours. You can look at temperature and precipitation maps. Really, you can explore all parts of Alberta without leaving your classroom, without leaving your town or city. Exciting changes are coming to Alberta Tomorrow. This is version 6 of Alberta Tomorrow that was released in spring of 2020. However, 2022 means we are going to be adding the addition of an Indigenous module, as well as through our partnership with Water Rangers, we are offering free water test kits to classrooms and teachers who apply to use those with Alberta Tomorrow. So want to know about what teachers say and students say when they use Alberta Tomorrow in their classroom? Watch this. Alberta Tomorrow is a free online learning tool helping Albertans to understand complex land use issues.
It was cool to see how everything's like affected by each other. Like you can't just do something to one thing without like completely disrupting like 4 or 5 other things just because everything's so connected and intertwined with each other.
We still need oil production, we still need timber production, we still need agriculture, because agriculture, that gives us food and everything. Keep the industries, make sure they're not overpowering.
It totally bridges the gap here between theory and practice, but they certainly can see the trials and errors that any town councillor or any land use planner would experience when they're trying to balance social economics with environment.
I really liked using Alberta Tomorrow. It gave us a little bit more focus than we've had for the ecology unit.
I like hands-on learning too. It was a very visual too, so you can actually like see.
I found that getting your water quality to go up was really hard. There's a lot of trade-offs that you'd have to make, and it was next to impossible to get to my goal for water quality.
Interesting is like we're being taught how to think for future generations, whereas like our parents didn't necessarily, like they weren't taught, okay, well you need to think about how you're going to change the world for your kids and your grandkids, but it's like now we have to learn how to fix the world and how to sustain it for generations that we can't even necessarily foresee.
Alberta Tomorrow, to me, is where you can change the future and see what, and if you and just feel like you're a government official or a land use planner.
I feel like now that I have a better understanding of what needs to be done, or like looking at the population growth and like the exponential growth, that you could kind of get a better understanding of like where the government is going to go with stuff that they need to work out to achieve socioeconomic and environmental needs while balancing them all.
That anything's possible if you use best practices, and you can basically do anything.
It's just a fun site to go on, and it's a really easy way to learn what we're doing to our ecosystem.
Visit www.albertatomorrow.ca today and create your own plan for Alberta's future. So as you can see, there are many different uses for the Alberta Tomorrow simulator in your classroom. One of the visuals I like to use is this, my Lego map of Alberta. Because really what we're trying to get across to students is we have this much land, and we have to make decisions about how we're going to use that land. So, for example, as our population continues to grow and we need to get more pink Lego on this map, how do we do that without taking something else away? And so sharp students will soon understand that we can't get more pink Lego on here without taking something else away, unless we stack Lego. And so we have discussions about higher density developments and reducing urban sprawl to try and maintain the other colors. These are some of the activities that we do when I come into your classroom. Thanks for joining me as we explored Alberta from the seat of our pants. I hope you learned a little bit about the simulator, how to use it, how your students will be able to explore all of Alberta, past, present, and future. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. My email address is info@albertatomorrow.ca. Check out the website, www.albertatomorrow.ca. Remember, we have free lesson plans, learning materials. The simulation software is free school visits, virtual or in person. So feel free to contact me. Thanks.